Now Eve called her son Seth, because she said, "The great galactic father of the nebula, Uranos," which means Father Anu, has provided a substitute for our son Abel, because Cain killed him. Through him we shall see the delivering one. Seth grew up and became strong. In time, Eve accepted Seth as the perfect substitute for her son Abel. She missed Abel's presence, but she now had someone to fill the void she had felt for her lost children. Seth took up dwelling in Abel's old land. He also continues the work of his brother, and seemed to know inherently within himself the resemblance he had to Abel. Now, in time, Adam and Eve gave birth to another daughter, whom they called Ava. Ava was a very beautiful woman, her emphasis being upon the outer countenance. She seemed to exude a certain numbing characteristic, which tended to mesmerize her brother. Seth had watched her grow up, looking now upon her growing maturity. He had noticed her when they played together. He noticed her alluring attractiveness. However, Seth only noticed her curiously at first, sometimes, though, flirtingly, especially now that she had become more mature and robust. Now Seth had used his reason, which he was properly endowed with. She is her own person, not a thing for my amusement. I should not look upon her so. She must give me her love willingly. Seth had a deep, loving respect, which burned within his heart for his sister Ava. His feelings for her caused him to be considerate of her wishes and physical needs. Seth had not contemplated his lower lustful feelings very long, because reason and his love for her kept his thoughts dignified. Now Seth and Ava were bathing in the big pond upon this particular day, and Ava usually wore her cloth bathing, as did Seth. Their bathing consisted of mostly swimming, diving, wading, and walking through the shallows, watching and wondering about the little creatures, such as fish. Ava stood with her back to the cliffside, allowing the edge of the falls to run down her shoulder, splashing on her hair, which was now almost out of reach of the water's violent turbulence. She threw her head back, arching her back slightly, allowing the water to touch her long black hair with her hands, and her elbows were up in the air. She seemed to pay no attention to her brother, who had been watching her curiously. He noticed her form and delicate shapeliness, the slender waist being etched by Ava's ribs protruding slightly as she arched her back toward the flow of water, the waterfall that was cascading down from the highest bluffs above her. Seth watched. He watched her intently. Things were beginning to stir within him, things that had only sparingly been felt before, as he would push those thoughts aside for higher attributes of love and respect for Ava. Seth brought his eyes up to Ava's breasts, as her arching back pushed them now, straight and protruding. Seth's stomach began to churn. He felt something burning within him, a feeling of great passion, like a fire, which, when it's been set, cannot be put out quickly. Seth dove under the water and swam below the surface towards Ava. He swam almost up to where Ava was standing, and then he surfaced. He stood watching her now purposefully. Ava was aware of her brother's curiosity. She had been wondering things too. She had been noticing her brother. She liked his muscular build. Tall shoulders, thick wavy blonde hair. Yes, she had been aware of her thoughts lately, which sometimes amused her, but other times only gave her uneasiness. Each day her yearning grew, yet something had made her more hesitant. There was something deep within Ava that caused her to misunderstand her own feelings. Sometimes she imagined Seth's strong arms taking her up and firmly yet lovingly holding her. They would gaze into each other's eyes and intuitively understand each other, each perceiving the other's love, showing it at first by only stares and caresses. Other times Ava didn't feel those things, but she felt repulsed by her thoughts. Somewhere inside her there was this conflict. She didn't want to be taken forcefully. She wanted to give herself to Seth, but Seth could not always help displaying his macho style. His overbearing approach would sometimes rob Ava's desire for him. Then, when her fantasies would be faded by pictures of reality, Ava became moody. Seth felt estranged from her then, but the more Seth felt distant, the more he tried to understand her, the more she would turn away. He only knew how to act the way he was, manly and domineering. But Ava's curiosity did linger on, and there were times, like today, when Ava felt the longing consciously. Ava could feel a warm sensation within her body. She felt a certain anticipation today, an anticipation so strong that she knew it could not wait longer. Ava reached her hand up to her cloth and pulled it down, holding it loosely in her hand, her arms dangling now beside her. The cloth fell to the pond. Ava's eyes were looking away from Seth, teasingly. As Seth stared at his sister, she pushed her bottom lip up against her teeth. Now her eyes met his intense stare. They looked assuringly at each other. Seth's insides were almost ready to explode from desire for her. There was something happening to him that he had never known. He was completely divided. His reason and emotion were separated, neither acting properly, nor even at all, for that matter. All Seth could sense was passion. So Ava and Seth joined each other, touching curiously, caressing gently. The feelings of this passion growing, it split Seth's consciousness into distinctions he had never known. So Seth and Ava had a son. They called him Enosh. It means mortal, for it was from that time that man became mortal. Seth had become mesmerized by Ava's beauty. Her lustful lure had trapped his psyche within its own barriers, and Seth could not escape the passions within himself. His consciousness fell, separating the outer reasoning powers from his astral body of emotion. Seth had fallen and taken the mental attributes away from his emotional attributes, losing sight of much that he had been. His body and Ava's had crystallized deep within this carnal nature. Now, Cain, having awakened, finding himself banished in the realm of Nod, the netherworld of the afterlife, it manifested his body into the lower vibrations of Sheol. He was crystallized metamorphically into the manifest state or quality. Cain's inner being was being reflected through his own thought forms, through the veils. He would be transforming his being from glory to glory, even as is done by the Lord. Cain was now upon his first state of vengeance. He had entered into that punishment of which our Father in heaven had spoken, after which he was to be traveling through 6 more gates. The 7th gate would be that gate of liberty that Cron had called him to. It would be the time of the restoration into the first estate. Thus Cain, having been united to Lilith on earth, was now one with her completely. Being joined with her in flesh, he was eternally bound to her, even now in this lower world of vibration. And in time he appeared to his son Enoch in a dream. For, said Cain, I will initiate him into these mysteries through these gates of my vengeance and the trials, so that he may thereby be restored to my first estate with me, where I am going. So Cain did instruct Enoch by means of dreams, and his son Enoch did begin to build a city in Nod. And so Cain did build upon this realm of Sheol a place for the souls of like being to inhabit after death. Cain knew that his children would all need a place to congregate. This place he would build with every form and bulwark, great fortress from the storm, from the realm for all those passing through. All that would be needed for the journey home to earth would be written in the patterns that Cain would build. All that Cain erected would be typical of the signification of his life. Surely his children would say, within each of their own generations, Who am I? Where do I go? What shall I do to be saved, to be delivered from this awful longing? Now Cain knew these answers partly. He knew who he was and who he had been on earth. He knew of the command of Cron to him, of the 4 veils he must pass through, although of their actual experience he only knew the first veil as yet. Cain also knew of the goal of which he transpired. These things he would erect monuments to within the realm of Sheol. Cain said to Enoch in the dream to his son, I shall represent the first estate, which was fallen. You shall represent the second estate, which has been initiated into the journey back. Your son you shall name Arad, for he shall represent a fugitive and a wanderer, as I also am this day. For when one has fallen into this realm, he must be initiated into these mysteries, and as a fugitive he shall live until he has passed the 7 gates. So Cain instructed Enoch to build a great city, and the city had a temple in the center thereof. The temple would have 4 courts and 7 gates, each entering and leaving one of the 4 courts. Because the temple was a spiral, the last gate was also the first gate. As there was a descending passageway that led downward back to the first gate, the entire system ascending like a spiral by steps, up from gate to gate, and then finally down and back to the first gate again. Alas, this was the fate of the sons of Cain. They would spiral around through their many gates of vengeance until they would be brought back to their first estate again. This, as can be seen, would only lead one to the same endless round, the spiral representing the endlessness of the fate of Cain. But there was hope for Cain and all his children. At that descending passageway down through the middle of the temple there was a great chamber, and this was the king's chamber. For those who were worthy, the chamber would be built, and this chamber would be a path of the victors of the people of Cain. Cain built the first court. Its dimensions were 666 cubits in width, and again in breadth. Enoch constructed the walls of crystal to represent snow. It was 666 feet high, of glistening crystal. This, said Cain to Enoch, shall represent my fall into the crystallizing forms of his kingdom. Within this you cannot escape through the barrier, though it is somewhat transparent, and it allows for one to see beyond himself. It cannot be trespassed. There the initiates will be inflicted with a trial. If they pass, they shall be worthy of the second court. The first gate shall correspond to earth and the moon, where I and mother began, and the second gate is Venus. So the first court was constructed of crystal, and was carefully designed with great waterfalls and bounding fountains. The water bounded down from the great heights. The falls made a barrier which surrounded the first court. Now one could pass through the barrier with difficulty, notwithstanding they would become wet. Cain said to Enoch, this shall represent the initiation. These waters shall typify baptism, the baptism of initiation, which is signified also by thy name. It is thus the first gate of the great path of Cron for us. We shall all soon die, and all the world will be initiated into this baptism by waters upon the earth, and a baptismal font was made in the court of the first gate. Enoch constructed a wall of earth then. The wall encircled a large corridor, and it had tables. The tables were the initiation of the second court. Those of Cain's children who would be worthy to enter this court would now dine at the sacred meal. This will represent the life that we must bear with great madness. We shall sustain our lives by the common table. We shall eat the flesh of the animal, and we shall drink his blood. And as a wanderer we shall be satisfied with death as our meal, and the death of the beast will give us life. This gate shall correspond to dry earth, for the waters on the earth shall be dried up and recede to their place. We will live in a dry desert land. The fourth gate shall correspond to thy son who is born, and him you will name Irad. The third gate shall correspond to Mercury, and he, the fourth gate, to the sun. So Enoch constructed a wall. This was the third court, and it was constructed of marble. The marble wall surrounded the court, and shall represent the planes of atmosphere. Now the third court shall be made of the blue marble, with swirls of white, the marble representing the wind when it blows. This wall shall surround the third court, and there shall be classes here, for those who have been worthy to pass the prior gates. Here our children shall become priests, and they'll learn the mysteries. This shall lead to the fifth gate of the temple of Cain, and this gate shall be represented by the next grandson, who shall be called Methusael, and his name means the one who is of God. For only those who are of God shall leave this court. The 5th gate shall correspond to Mars, and the 6th gate to Jupiter. The 4th court shall be made of great stones. This wall shall surround the 6th and the 7th gate. To enter the corridor shall be the sacred 6th gate, and it shall be represented by the next child born of thy line, who will be called Lamech. His name means a brave man who is strong. And he shall be given the meaning of the holy oracle that leads to the 7th. Finally, the descending passageway shall lead to the 7th gate, which is also the 1st. The 7th gate shall be Saturn. Now in the center of the 4th court, which is in the center of the temple, and high above the ground, shall be an altar. Upon the altar shall be a sacred fire. There shall be a hole in the roof, a window where the light of the fire will shine, and it will shine through the window like a prism, and it will be like a rainbow of color. This is the rainbow of Cron's covenant to us. Cain said, "This is the last court to enter. Many will see the rainbow color issuing out of the temple and nod. It shall come from here, in the innermost sanctuary of the city. But few indeed will enter the covenant, because it is a rainbow, and so it means that anyone who enters therein must come into the harmony of his being. They bring together all of their qualities, typified by the colors, into distinct manifestations, into a complete harmony. Most of our seed shall fail to enter the covenant of the rainbow. For those who enter the 4th court, and who do not harmonize their beings, to them the fire will be a place of death again. There they shall offer up the flesh of an animal's body to represent the second death, as the water represented the first death. Down into this elemental plane, the fire shall represent the second death, back into the world again. For we must be born again, of water and of fire. So for this reason, the next child in our line of descent shall be rejected, for he will hide in his prejudice, saying that he has invented a perfect dwelling. He will say he does not need to enter the covenant of the rainbow. There shall one day come one who will offer our descendants a salvation from a great time of trouble. But he will reject this, and he will be rejected himself. He will like the creation that he has made, and despise this one's counsel. He shall convince all of our descendants not to accept the salvation of that one. But one from among our descendants will be sought, and they will look to his brother, whom they will call Jubal. But he will also reject the counsel of the wise one. But instead he will invent music. He will play beautiful melodies upon a stringed instrument. But this will only mesmerize his thinking and those who follow him. Many will take up the strings and forget the counsel of the wise one. He will not be able to understand that he must enlighten his mind with the higher truth of our father Cron. Yes, by harmonizing the heart with love and joy and peace, and long-suffering kindness and goodness and faith and mildness and self-control and sincerity. So they will not be able to enter the covenant of the rainbow. They will have no leader to help them. Then they will give to Lamech, son of Cain, another wife, that he would bring forth finally a savior for the sons of Cain. This son also, through his new wife, will not produce the desired leader. This one they will call Tubal-Cain, called after myself. He will not understand the mysteries, and he will think that the way to the covenant of peace will be by war. He will contrive many kinds of weapons from copper and iron. He will teach the art of smelting in the metals for the technological use, and this will fail the people as well. Tubal-Cain will persuade many, and multitudes will be misled. So shall another heir be sought, but the only heir that will be left shall be a woman. And all the people shall reject her, saying, "She is a woman. Never has the heir been a woman. It's blasphemy." Nevertheless, she shall be the one who will save the people. Through her the line of Cain shall be saved. She shall be called Naamah, which means pleasantness. She will bring what is pleasing to Cron and men. And Naamah will enter into the covenant of the rainbow and the covenant of peace. And mankind will be given the new chance, and the wars of the earth shall cease for many years. So Cain became the prince of the elemental world. Cain lived 45 years, and he died. He was taken by the hand of the seraphic angel to the elemental world, which was a world exactly like the earth plane, but more refined. There the world was being built according to Cain's own likeness. Cain and Lilith were building the world by the forms of their own minds, just as on the earth. Adam and Eve had seen the earth change as they themselves translated their minds deeper into the carnal nature. Cain's world was a vast one. The ecology of that world was exactly like the earth, for all planes work on that same law. Only Cain's world was not within the plane of fixity, like the forms on earth. Earth was fixed. It is where the images of the mind form into the reality of the human nature. Here in Sheol, the images are more fluid and changing. This world was the place for change. The place would be the place of purgatory, a place of punishment and progress. Both Cain and Abel were all there together. Cain was there, yes, but Abel would not be able to know of him now. Abel was the prince of the higher nature in the nether world. Cain was the king of the lower portions and the nature of this world. Through 4 subplanes of Sheol he would need to be transformed until he could finally reach the place of his natural estate again. So Cain went out from the earth plane to the nether world, to the first subplane of the elemental plane. He had been given the form of a beast. Now he was adapting to that first plane. He would appear as an aquatic amphibian reptile. Cain had received the power of the second gate, his power being represented by his fin-like tail. He had finished his course upon the frozen fixity of the first subplane, of the first court typified by ice. Now Cain ruled over 2 subplanes, reigning with the power of the 2 gifts or signets. These signs are marks that Cron had promised Cain. Now Samael appeared unto Cain, swimming up to Cain, gliding like a serpent in the water. For Samael was given the body of a serpent, endowed with the 4 powers of the universe. He had the ability to slither upon land. He had wings as well to fly through the air, which is how Samael could approach all those in all kingdoms, subduing and slandering and deceiving all that could be beguiled. Aside from the amphibious nature and the wings, he also could enter into the holes of the earth, approaching even the lowliest of the creatures beneath the ground, for he had great scales covering his entire body, and these could withstand the great temperatures within the lava cavities, down in the caverns. And of course, he had a voice, and this was the power of man, through which he could deceive Eve. Now Samael was endowed with ears, with which he could learn great knowledge. This, though partly to his advantage, will also yet lead to his downfall. For Cron had given Samael these attributes, but had tricked him in this respect, because it is by the ears that a man may himself defeat the great deceiver. And if a man learn the proper method, he cannot be seduced by this cunning one. Though Samael can hear instruction, he will not usually accept it. Now, this learning of his, it has corrupted him with pride. So it is that a man may lure to a stupor the great deceiving serpent with the vibrations and the harmonies of the outer worldly knowledge. So now these are the 4 great attributes: to swim in water, to slither on land, fly through the air, and there is one more attribute that Cron had given Samael. The tempter could mesmerize the lower vibrations of the elemental fire nature. Samael could look at his opponent, stare into his eyes, and cause them to change their will. He had the power to mesmerize the senses by an enchantment of lust. It's the nature of the fire. But being powerful, it reaches unto the first realm, though it is the 4th, as there are 4 realms to which Samael rules. The first is that of the water, the second is that of the earth, the third is that of air, and the 4th is that of fire. Samael had been cast out of paradise along with Adam. It was this one attribute that Samael had forfeited, the ability to walk upright with the 2 legs. With these 2 legs he stood tall, and he could feel the dignity and the confidence. But now Cron had taken away Samael's dignity, and he had committed him to slithering like a serpent upon the earth, outside of the plane of earth. Now Adam did not lose this dignity, as did Samael. This shows that man is superior to him, and he will eventually go back to paradise, but to that plane Samael will never return, and this because he had deceived Eve and all those living. But if you will receive it, man is already endowed with the power of entering paradise. Man does not perceive his worthiness. He sees himself debased along with his enemy, for the very reason he feels it necessary to relinquish his own powers until his consciousness of evil in this world is reconciled. Adam could not live without Eve. Thus he relinquished his powers willingly, partaking of the fruit without being deceived. He thus died willingly that he might redeem his body and bring together again the lower forces into harmony. Adam knew he could not dwell upon the paradisical plane, while his lower potencies dwelled upon the other plane. His sense of love and compassion had compelled him to relinquish his power, and Cron had provided a way back. As man finally redeems his subtle bodies, and that of the emotional and mental bodies in the fall. Now, Cain was sitting upon a cleft in a rock which jettisoned out from this great chasm in the sea. This wasn't the earthly sea, but a vast reservoir within the elemental plane. Though it cannot be seen with a man's natural eye, it's nevertheless there within the nether world. So Cain sat high in the air upon a rocky sheet of ice which protruded out from the mammoth-like wall of crystallized forms within this kingdom. Cain could still crawl out from the sea and sit upon this dry crystallized forms in his plane. Now Cain saw Samael coming toward his little rock upon which he was sitting, a beautiful white swirling trail being left behind the deceiver as he slithered through the dark turquoise waters. Above him was ever lightening turquoise. Beneath him, ragged cliffs in various forms of vegetation, growing in and out of the clefts and crevices in the sides of the chasm. Cain had been exploring the chasm today. He saw an abundance of beautiful things there. The elemental water creatures swimming here and there, floating plasmic-like half-creatures, fibrous plants, one-celled organisms, breathing creatures which resembled many aquatic mammals he had known on Earth, and other intrigues and fascinations which Cain could have explored for weeks on end without having seen it all. Cain assumed that this creature coming towards him was just another grotesque creature from this unusual plane of the netherworld. But watching more carefully, Cain could see more clearly now what was approaching him. Cain stood upright, balancing himself against the cliff with his tail. The awesome creature approaching Cain spoke. "Hello!" This startled Cain. Yet Cain could not easily be startled. He had seen so many things in his long journeys. Not only that, Cain almost instinctively knew who this was. But consciously, he was ignorant of all of this. "Who are you?" Cain replied to this creature. "How is it you speak?" "I am a friend," Samael countered. "I am the king of this world, and also many others like it. I am God. I have come to make you my subject." Cain laughed. "Me, your subject? Why should I subject myself to you? I am the king of this world, and Lilith is my queen. We have a son named Enoch. Someday he will come here too, from the realm of earth, and I will relinquish my throne to him. For I will go unto the second subplane of the elemental realms. I will take up my kingdom next, and then I will rule. But how is it I should give my dominion to you, you who are not my heir, one that I don't even know?" Samael replied in answer to Cain, "Oh, but I am God. I rule not only this world, but the world in which you were born. I am the prince of the four kingdoms. You shall do my will upon this elemental kingdom, and I shall rule over you with kindliness." "Cron is ruler, no one else," said Cain. "I shall not listen to your lies. Go away, Samael, you great deceiver of all. I have heard of you. It is you who seduced my mother. You have no part in this land, nor in my throne. I am God, and there is none else, and you will bow to me and serve me, and you will bow to no other but me, for I am God, and there is none else. And not only this, but you must obey my rule over thee," Samael persisted, "for without me you will have no wife. For Lilith is my twin sister. If you will not listen to me, I will go to her, and she will listen. but your house will be divided." Cain was completely astonished by this revelation. But Cain did not allow this fear to show, and he just said, "Begone with you, Samael, or I shall run you through with my horn. Begone, you cunning slanderer, or I shall crush thy head with my great tail." And so Samael flew up through the water with a plunging force, plumes of bubbles trailing around him, becoming lost out of sight, encircled within his thrust, and Cain sighed a relief and sat back down on the rock. Cain sat thinking for a while. What would he do if Samael was right? Could Lilith be Samael's sister? Cain cried out in agony, his roar heard throughout the elemental plane, resounding from every crevice and every canyon. Samael heard Cain as he was leaving. He knew he had struck the right chord. Cain's heart was pulsating with tremendous throbs. He knew what he must do. He knew that Samael would be his downfall. If ever Samael reached his wife, Lilith, he must not allow this to happen. But how could he stop Samael? He who had once been on the great council of the gods. He who had deceived his mother. He who even Adam could not defeat in battle. Cain thought quickly. He would give his life if necessary, but he will stop this intruder with every power that Cron had given him. It was not Cain's way to pussyfoot around. He knew in his fit of great rage what he must do, so he slapped his tail against the rock, pushing his immense body through the water, the waves pulsating around him as he sped through the sea bottom, swerving in and out of the rocks and cliffs, his tail acting as a giant thrust machine. Cain's blood still throbbing with rage, he saw Samael in the water, right ahead of him. "Halt, slanderer," said Cain. "I shall rend you through. I will not allow you to estrange my wife, even if she is your sister. For whether she is or whether she is not, it makes no difference to me. For I shall rend you through, without a doubt, and then you will no more act cunningly to deceive us again. I will avenge my wife, my mother, and Cron. You will die, and you will be debased forever." Samael raised himself up on his tail, perched upon the floating motion of the water beneath him. "You shall not succeed, Cain. I have power that you do not know." Cain couldn't take it anymore. He lunged with a great force towards Samael's massive frame. His tail came spinning around from behind him, piercing the water like a razor's edge. It slapped up against Samael and whipped up around his body with a threatening grip. His head pushed forward, he plunged his great horn straight through Samael's chest. A mass of water being thrown forward by his tail motion, a surging wave began making its way toward the shore. Samael was taken off his guard. He hadn't believed that Cain would do such a thing, and he was surprised by Cain's tremendous strength. But Samael was also strong. Now Samael opened his jaws. His teeth were like sharks, only more threatening. He bit down on Cain's neck, blood shooting and streaming, their massive bodies intertwined in the struggle. Swirling masses of water, white mixed with red, pluming colonnades of surging bubbles. Cain felt the pain shoot down from his back as Samael ripped huge pieces of Cain's flesh right off his body. Cain sent a blood-curdling roar that echoed through the entire 4 subplanes, and Lilith heard her husband. Lilith was awakened. Lilith knew not what was transpiring, yet intuitively she sensed that something awesomely tragic was happening. Lilith sped out through her cave opening and swam with all her might toward the screen. Cain tightened his grip upon Samael, with one great groan reverberating again throughout the entire kingdom. He pressed his strength to the limit, his tail slipping up around Samael's head, and Cain squeezed. Samael's head was stopped now for a moment from ripping more of Cain's flesh, and Cain plunged his horn again deeply into Samael's chest. Samael's green blood spilling now into the mingling red and white. Samael roared. Now he was angry. Samael was circling his tail now, near Cain's head, his anguish being felt now in his resounding cry, "I will crush your head, Cain. I am tired of your trifles." Just then Lilith arrived, Charging with her every force, she came upon Samael, her brother, swinging around her tail, striking his frame. The force knocked Samael free from Cain's death grip. Then she rushed in to her husband, and clutching him, she cried, "Stop, stop, I say. I will not allow this fight. I will not leave here. You both will have to kill me to get to the other." Samael shook his head to get the feeling back in his neck. Blood running down his chest, he stood completely shocked, but he did not do anything. He needed Cain. He needed Lilith. And he hoped that Cain would not continue on this course, for he knew what then he would have to do. He would have to kill them both. Cain hesitated. "Let me go, Lilith. I must kill this beast. Let me to my business, woman. You have no part in this. Go home." Lilith answered Cain, "I cannot allow you to fight this one, for he is my brother. But, woman, I am the only being that can do this thing. Your brother is my enemy. I must finish him now." "No," Lilith retorted. "He is not your enemy. He is my brother, the father of darkness. I am his accomplice, the accomplice to darkness. All that I am I owe to this. I shall not allow you to fight this one. Besides, you do not even know his power. You cannot kill him anyway. Only all the forces of light can destroy him, and yet he comes back again to rule. Though he disappear from your sight, he will only be transformed into another world. Your powers of those two subplanes are dependent upon him. He holds the keys to these mysteries. When Cron sent you here, he sent you under his authority, and you cannot escape him." So Cain ceased his aggression and hung his head, realizing that he was defeated. "I shall listen to your voice, my Lilith, but I shall not be ruled by this one. We will talk of this in the morning." So Cain turned to Samael, saying, "You shall not receive my kingdom from me, and neither shall you control me through my Lilith. Go away before I rend you through with my secret power, for I also have a secret power that you do not know, neither you nor Lilith. So I will spare you if you leave right now." Now, Samael did not believe Cain, but he did not want to kill him. Samael wanted to rule Cain. He needed his plane as a means to his own selfish ends. Neither did he really love his sister, but he needed her to get to Cain. So Samael went away for now, for he had plans to capture Cain's kingdom, but now he would need to go away and heal. But he would be back. So Samael sped out away, the water rippling behind him. Samael the invincible. He had been wounded, but he had been wounded in more ways than one. This was a shock to Samael's reason. He had not anticipated the power of this one called Cain. The council of the gods had empowered him well, Samael thought to himself. This would not be easy. If he could not defeat Cain in battle, he would defeat him through Lilith, cunningly, through deception. After all, Samael had the right to this world. Hadn't he been the one who created all of this? Yes, it had been Samael, the deceiver, who had created all of this through Lilith. Lilith is his power outworking. She was the master worker along with his sister Achilea, the wise one. Achilea was the most beautiful lady. She had infiltrated the elemental plane where Abel was. She had secretly formed and veiled Abel's every thought and desire. Though Abel had not been aware of her subtle presence, she was active just the same. If Samael was the deceiver, Achilea was Samael's greatest accomplishment. Not only had she infiltrated the astral plane of emotion, but she had done it uniquely, cunningly, planning. She had made Abel fall for the entire plan. She had welded her illusions around Abel's realities. She had interconnected wisdom with emotion, making this link indissoluble.